This is the podcast where people who have defied expectations and embraced their unique paths to success tell their stories. If you care about traditional old-fashioned values and want to achieve modern success, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Unconventional Podcast, where traditional is unconventional. Here's your host, Eric Bonilla.
Nick, what's happening, man? How you doing?
Hey, what's up, buddy? It's good to see you again.
Yes. Been a while, man. And hey, awesome. Glad you could make it today, man. I know you're busy, so.
I enjoy talking to you. We've talked on the phone many times, and I enjoy your posts too. You have cojones. We were talking before we started. You got cojones to be putting all that stuff up there. I'll bet you lost a few followers due to that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm sure I have, man. That's all right.
like that guy on the...
That's funny, man. Yeah. So I'm gonna jump into it, man. I like giving an intro to everyone. So Nick Manfredi, CEO and founder of the Manfredi Group, established in 1998. Christian father, been married 30 years. And you have 3 boys.
Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Awesome.
Group is a real estate investment corporation. That's kind of what we do.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. And congrats on the 30 years coming up.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I just wanted to just kind of start from the get-go, like how you're at, like as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
You know, you can start as like high school. How was that? I mean, athletic or just real studious? How was that?
I would say early in life, I was bit of a trickster. I would say sports. You know, I remember you and I playing football together. But I remember as a kid, it was all of us were in sports. That's pretty much no matter what played Little League baseball and, Pop Warner football. And, but my parents, I was always at the beach, and I would have preferred to be at the beach all the time. But, this is the 70s, and we were living in Walnut, and it's a little far to get to the beach. So it ends up being baseball. But my parents got divorced. That was probably the thing that had that was the most impactful event of my life in it. And, ended up being a real positive thing. My parents' divorce, I realized, wow, families can explode. And I didn't want that, even at 11 years old, I didn't want that to happen in my life. So that definitely put in motion where I am today, completely, 100% where I'm at. Like, I'm not going to do that.
So that was a positive effect on you in a way.
Yeah, like what they say, whatever, not to be cliche, but whatever doesn't, break you, makes you stronger. Whatever can kill you makes you stronger. And I saw the mistakes that my parents made, and I didn't want to make those same mistakes both. In some ways, my dad maybe could have done better in business, the way and supported my mom the way that she wanted to be supported. My mom probably, made her own mistakes as well. And so watching the family kind of explode and being a part of that explosion, like shrapnel being thrown away.
Yeah.
I wasn't thrown away. I was loved by my parents, but, being exploded out of this family unit that no longer existed, I really wanted to figure all of that stuff out. I really wanted to change my future so that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. So what do you think you took more seriously? Did you find yourself taking things more seriously at a younger age because of that? Like school or sports?
I would say that, I was still my reaction, I don't think I was consciously reacting to anything at that point in time. I think that, I was just trying to emotionally, kind of weather the storm. I don't think anyone else really saw me going through a heck of a whole lot. I was just treating it like I'm analytical, and I was super analytical as a kid. And so I was, wow, and looking around me going, so if you don't do stuff correctly, you're gonna affect a lot of people's lives. And I didn't see their life any better. Neither one of them better lives because of the divorce. So I saw it as a net loss for the whole family and my parents. So I would say that I would say I was a little bummed out and everything, but ultimately I was just taking it all in, and filing it away. And I definitely didn't take school any more seriously.
All right.
School any more seriously.
So you went like overachieving, getting A's and.
No way, man. No way. I was always able to get by with like C's and like practically, just smooth. I remember when we were at Walnut and I remember bringing the biology teacher, a cake for his birthday and everything in order just to pass the class. I think he gave me a D, but I drew pictures on the final exam. There's no way I passed that class. I had no desire to do anything academically that was to provide for myself. I was just going to pass. I'll go to junior college, and then right around junior college, psychology became real interesting.
Okay.
And that's whenever I wanted to start. That's whenever being an adult going, wow, I'd like to know why families blow up. I'd like to know why people make the decisions that they make. And even though psychology would be, which is a really bad term for what psychology is today. Psychology, the word psyche is a Greek word which means the study of your soul. Ology, study of, psyche, your soul. Psychology is completely secular and really doesn't believe you have a soul. So it, I didn't figure that out until much later, but I wanted to figure out why people made the decisions that they made, and psychology through statistics was kind of predictive. It was helping me provide a predictive index as to why people might do the things that they do. So that kind of came afterward, didn't come during high school. I was partying with you, man. You and I partied at so many dang parties. It was ridiculous. Well, I was not studying at all.
All right. So psychology kind of like lit a fire because it kind of stoked your curiosity.
I felt like I could make a positive impact on people's lives. I felt like at that, in the 80s and 90s, there were people who were professionals that still made a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I could get straight A's. I could read a book and pretty much, I just knew the book. It was intuitive to me. And that probably has something to do with my sales. Sales came naturally too. So psych and sales came naturally. And I thought I could really improve people's lives. And until I graduated, I went through my postgraduate. My master's thesis was on adult children and the perception of self as intimate partners. I really wanted to figure myself out and others. And then after practicing for a few years, I said, this stuff is, I wasn't happy with it at all.
What were you practicing, like marriage counseling, or?
I was doing group and individual psychotherapy. I was doing case management for a hospital at the same time. I was doing industrial psych for another guy. So I was working my butt off. I was working my tail off. Bought my first house at 27 or 28. And so, yeah.
What was the crossroads where you said, maybe this, did you have one?
Yeah, it was all in one day. And my wife had told me that, we're married. My wife told me we're married.
Really? All right.
That we're pregnant. Told me that we're pregnant. And it was on a Monday. She told me we were pregnant. Gave me a little thing. Surprise you. And we had been trying, not for long, but been trying. And then it all hit me kind of in one day. And I'm all like, I was totally depressed going, it was a Thursday. So Monday, she told me we're pregnant. Yeah. By Thursday, I'm like, I can't do this for the rest of my life. And I prayed. So when I prayed, I that the Lord would just take, because I'm all, if you want me to continue to do this, I will, but this is, it's really baloney. It's really, people change when they mess up their life so bad that they have to change. Not because in my opinion, that a psychologist or a therapist provides them with any wisdom, which is what I thought I would be doing.
Yeah.
Wisdom and encouragement and direction. They don't change because of that. So it wasn't moving fast. Nothing was happening. I didn't feel, it's really not effective, generally speaking. The stats even show that, that people do, whenever they're in trauma, they do just as well, if not better, in 13 weeks without therapy as if they were in therapy. Wow. So I was like, wow, this is not what I expected. I thought it would be far more productive. I'd have more success with individuals. And so I prayed, and I was bawling my tuchus off, and I was crying with a guy on the phone who was a pastor, who was my best friend at the time. And I knew him before he was a pastor, and we went to a lot of parties together, but he became a pastor. And I said, I can't believe that I'm doing this. So I prayed that the Lord would just take hold of my life professionally. I was already a Christian, but this was real submission to Christ. I mean, heavy submission to Christ, saying, you have control of my life. I've driven even though I'm making great money, I own private offices and everything. I felt like I had driven my life into the dirt. I was by everybody's outward, view in, I was a success already at a very early age, but the feeling of success wasn't there, and I was depressed instead. And so I got off the phone with this best friend of mine, and I made a quick phone call to a headhunter, and I made an appointment for the next day just to go and talk to him. I went to lunch. And mind you, I just got done praying with him, saying, Lord, take control of my life. If you want me to stay here, I will. If not, be very clear, and send me in another direction. So I made a quick phone call thinking, I went and had a blue cheese salad, came back to the office.
Yeah.
And I got a call from HR. I went up there, and HR said, sorry, we got to lay you off right here, right now.
No.
40 minutes later, and I start giggling, but not giggling like ha ha, giggling a little bit ha ha, a little bit like holy mackerel. I was just praying for this. And so they're laying me off, and my beeper, this is back when there's beepers, my beeper goes off. Yeah. My beeper goes off, and I go, hold on. I was just praying about this. If God is in this is going to be a job offer for more than what I'm making right now. Can I use your phone? And the CEO of this hospital said, yeah, you can use my phone right over there. I went over to his office, used his phone, and it was a job offer for $10,000 more, which was a decent amount back then, than what I was making. But I said, hold on, let me give you a call back. I got laid off, driving home, got pulled over by a cop who let me go, really felt for me. I was just like a little bit in shock. And the next day I went to see that headhunter, and I only was interested in one job, and it was a company that sold data for real estate, all the automated valuations when you go to Zillow now and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I was one of the guys back in 1998 that was selling those to, and I got the first job I tried to get. I got a job in sales, and I tripled my income, and I felt like, like hand in glove. It was just the perfect fit. And so I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have planned all that out. And I was, within 2 years, I not only had tripled my income from what I was making, which was already great income, I was buying 4 houses a month. And I was just on fire. And I could have never done that. It wasn't even related to psychology. So that's kind of how that all worked. That day was that one day. It was the leverage, the pivot point of my whole life.
Why do you think you were depressed while you were working in psychology?
I would say it was, you have hopes that I went through college, I all that preparation, all that studying, and I was coming to the realization I'll give you a story, a quick story.
Yeah.
I'm in group psychotherapy. There's 7 people, and we're talking, and I'm leading this group through a therapy session. And I'm 28 years old, right? And they're like, most of them are in their 60s. And this lady had pressured speech. She needed some medication, and she had a big red hat on and super red lipstick, and definitely one of those drama queen, definitely a drama queen. And I had to stop her so that the rest of the group could come in. So I said, Margaret was her name. Margaret, hold on for a second. I want to open this question up to the rest of the group with regard to this issue. And she looked at me, and there's a little profanity, a little bit, but not bad. She says to me, what are you going to be when you grow up? An asshole? And I start laughing. And it was so funny. And the rest of the whole group starts laughing because here I am, this young kid. And this is silliness. It's like, these people aren't going to change from this session. Probably not. Like, do some stuff. But, it'd be one thing if it was an AA session, but I'm doing group psychotherapy with cognitive behavioral intentions as a therapist with people who are in their 60s. They're not going to change, man. It just got silly. And so I would say that realization that I had spent all that time and that it felt like a waste. And it'd be like a guy digging a hole, and then someone says, go dig another hole, and then go dig another hole. And you don't even know why you're digging these holes. It feels pointless. And I think I was at that point of like, wow. But I think that God needed me to go through that because I needed to know. What I got to do is whenever, if you're looking for something in your bedroom, if you can imagine, I'm looking for my wallet, and you go into your bedroom, I really needed to know that this is empty. It's pointless. Psychology, studying of the mind, that it's fairly pointless in helping other people. Why? It's pointless partially because you've got how many different therapies? It's the study of your soul. And behaviorism, that is, you're just a bunch of all of your decisions are made up as a result of whether you got a positive or negative stimulus. You have Freud who says, oh, that's not it. Actually, you're a product of all your unconscious thoughts.
Yeah.
There's all these in-betweens, and they're totally, they're opposites of one another, and none of them are true or all of them are true. A good example would be how pointless it is. Back then, it used to be that if you were either homosexual or if you were a transvestite, it was labeled as a sickness. Not anymore. So in other words, truth even change. And that's really depressing, is to think that you would spend your whole life and you're looking for truth, why families break up. You're looking for, to have some explanations and everything, and to find out that none of this really works. That's depressing.
Yeah.
But God needed me to go through that, and kind of like I would have kept on trying to find where the truth was. Like if you put your wallet in a room and, or you thought you did. And so you look in the room and you take out the desk in the room. You look through all the cupboards, the desk, you take it out. Oh, it's not in there. You take all the covers off your bed, and then you take your bed out of the room. And then you take all the stuff that's in the room and you go, oh my gosh, it's definitely not in here.
Yeah.
God needed to take me through that long journey to say, with regard to what I was hoping for, that is the validation that I was going to find truth. And I had to walk away and say, it ain't here. It is not. And I would say, it was a great thing, but it was painful going through it.
So why do you think that the new thing you got into fit like a glove? Like you said, you mentioned it kind of felt like a glove. Why do you think that was?
I think that all of us, you, my wife, all of our kids, that God created us with a purpose. And we often have an idea. Sometimes, who knows why it's inspired, pride or otherwise, but of what that purpose should be or what we want it to be. So I liken, it to like some people are, you might have all different kinds of screwdriver heads, flathead, Phillips, but if you use the wrong head, you're not going to be able to do anything to go ahead and screw that in or that bolt in or what have you. You're not going to be able to do it. You're trying to choose. No, I'm a flathead when you're a Phillips head. So I think that that I needed to realize what God had designed me to be and what my purpose was when I wanted all the prestige of an education. I wanted the prestige of, hey, you really know what's going on in people's minds. And so I think that what I did that day was submit out of pure frustration and being lost. And when I submitted, God said, now I can use you. And now I can point you in the direction that I designed you to go into. And so I think that is, otherwise I would have never found it. Because we think we know, like what's best for us. But I didn't even know the difference between, for a house, what a grant deed is, that is you own the house, and a trust deed, that is what you owe the bank. I didn't know the difference of those two deeds. I didn't know anything about real estate. Zero. I would have never picked it, ever. I would have never picked it.
Really?
No. And so God, I think that God said, okay, now I can use you. And he put me in he directed my life 100%. And it was without a doubt, I know that I could have never gone ahead and chosen that path because I didn't even know it existed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you got started with sales, selling data,
right,
for real estate. So how did you get into investing, as a business?
Yeah, as a business. Well, I was selling data to. First off, I was like one of the top salesmen in the company within 3 months, and it was
really.
Yeah. So like the company now is known as CoreLogic. Back in the day, it was First American Real Estate Solutions.
Yeah.
So I worked for that company, and that, so it was, I forgot what your question was. I'm sorry.
It was like, so you started out with data.
So I was selling data to banks. I was selling data to appraisers, a lot of appraisers, to appraise the value of a property. And then there was this little category of real estate investors that periodically would call on me because some things that you could do with the data, that is, you could download the data now, like who owned the house. You could actually maybe download it, or it would give you evaluation or who owned it. So you could maybe send a letter, yeah. And so these guys, all of a sudden, I just saw how they lived, and they were, conservative. They were, they had a lot of assets, and they kept their business it was almost like a 1 or 2 person show, and they were wealthy. I mean, in my eyes, they were very wealthy, and I liked them. One of the guys' name was Mike Cantu, and he said, okay, I think you could, do you think I could do this? He's like, yeah, I think you can do this. And so I gave it a whirl, and within, a year of, just dabbling and figuring out a few things, within a year, I was, buying 4 houses. I was the first person back then there was DOS before Windows ever was around.
Oh yeah.
And so I was able to download data, based on who the homeowner was, and they lived out of state or whatever. And I was the first person in Riverside County to, send letters out to
absentees.
Exactly. I was like the first guy to do that. And otherwise it had to be manually typed in, like take a letter and you manually type the person's name in. And Mike Cantu used to do that. He was the guy who got me started. And I was able to do that in 45 seconds for the entire county. Just print it off in a PDF file and merge the data. And I remember the very first group of letters, I sent 200 letters out and I got 24 calls back.
Did you really?
Did. And I got 3 calls back. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to respond to them. Like, I didn't even have any money yet set up, or like individuals that could help me do. I didn't have a team set up or anything.
Yeah.
It was intimidating. Like, holy mackerel, this really works. And so that was kind of my intro. And then I started working with a guy, and buying a property, tying it up, and then wholesaling it to him, basically.
Yeah. He was the buyer?
Yeah, he was the buyer. And I actually got a hold of him because I was going to a Bible study when I had the strongest urge ever, like you need water to drink or something, to go to a Christian businessman's Bible study as soon as I got into this job and out of psychology. And so one of the guys that I had met, his name's John. John introduced me to the guy who I started wholesaling to. So it all happened because of a Bible study, because I prayed. I couldn't have. It was definitely God. It was divine. It was God did it, not me.
Wow. Hey, what year was this?
That would have been 1998.
Well, okay.
1998 is whenever I kind of started it, ballparking it. In 1999, somewhere in there.
Okay. And so then you started wholesaling, and then, but how long did it take you to start buying?
It was, I promised myself, it was a year. I promised myself that I would just learn how to be I would do my best to learn every single way that I could buy property. I wanted to just become a great buyer, the best buyer I could possibly be. So I wouldn't try and renovate a house and then sell it for at least a year. And so I did that. So it was about a year before I did my first house, where I renovated it and then turned around and sold it. Before that, I was wholesaling everything.
Okay. Yeah. So for somebody just getting started out, wholesaling might be, I don't know if that's still prevalent now, but back then.
It's a very different. Back then, the barrier to entry was minimal. And that is barrier to the entry of being a real estate investor.
Yeah.
It was, you could find money, a little bit of education, and the marketing didn't cost much. I spend $250,000 on marketing alone now every single year. And now we have pay-per-click on Google ads. We have people calling out from other countries, to people who are local. I have a guy who works 100% of his time in-house, just managing texting campaigns. So
that
barrier to entry is very, very different now than it was.
Yeah, because
it's heavy now.
Oh yeah, because you got people doing what you're doing. So someone just, what I mean? Spending like $250,000.
Yeah. And that's just, and I'm doing that, and at least I'm leveraging that money that I'm spending on marketing it, and I know how to buy houses.
Yeah.
So if you didn't know how to buy houses and you hadn't negotiated, you got to know when you're talking to them on the phone, and you might be, on the freeway, how to have that conversation, because you don't know when they're going to call.
Yeah.
And to spend that kind of money, and really not be a really good buyer is just too heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So you have these started back in about 2007, when companies started creating small companies that might have sales reps and might have individuals taking inbound calls and spending more money on marketing so that it funneled it in, creating a larger entity that bought properties. That started in about 2008, and then it's just continually grown until now. And there's stuff on Instagram and everything like, you can do this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not saying people can't, but you're talking about putting in a minimum of 10 grand every single month. And that's a lot to try and get to become a better buyer. At least when I first started, it might have cost me $500 a month, and now it costs $10,000 a month. It's just too much. That's a huge barrier to entry.
Did you go through? Well, obviously you went through some of the 08, 09 times. How was that for you?
That was tough. I sold all my properties in 2005, so I knew that the crash was coming.
Oh, really? Okay.
all of 2005, I had built up a large portfolio of properties, and I sold all of them.
What made you do that? What did you see?
There's guys that are out there that they kind of, some of them have aged out and don't do it as much, but they'll cover things like, economics, like affordability, mass migration, interest rates, and how those three things interact with one another. And for me, I already knew, even though I was mocked by my whole family in 2000, 6 and 7, saying, "Oh yeah, where's your big crash, Nick?" It was like, like on Titanic, it is a mathematical certainty. And it was a mathematical certainty. So I was done by 06. By January of 06, I was done. So it took all of 05, sold, I don't know, a bunch of properties. And then Texas is a state that they don't have income tax, but they have property tax. So properties don't go up or down as much in Texas at all. So I identified that as a really good place to sell California properties and do what is called a 1031 exchange. And so I own how many properties in Texas, and I own the Delta Airlines building. So 20th Century Fox was a tenant of mine, and that ended up being a smart and everything. And then in California, I created the first short sale processing company in 07. In 06. So before the crash, I had already had a staff ready and was being trained for when the crash took place. I would be there because I didn't want to own homes in California, but I would have a company that would transact short sales and just do it. I own theshortsaleprocessor.com, and we just processing. But that was still very, very difficult, because when the government decided they weren't going to foreclose anymore, well, then why do you need short sales? And so there weren't as many short sales as there otherwise would have been. And also there wasn't the need the government decided not to foreclose. It became kind of socialistic. So I was expecting by 09, I would bring all my Texas properties back to California through 1031s. I moved it there. In other words, I saw California being up here, and then what was going to happen, it was going to drop 50%. And I hit the actual number of the bottom of the market, to the penny of where we would be, and the month that it would hit the bottom. And so I did presentations in front of investor groups and everything. This is where it's going to be. And so what I expected was I would move it all to Texas while California was dropping. And then since Texas doesn't drop, I would just come back and do and buy all the properties that are right around 30 cents on the dollar, which I was doing that. But in the meantime, really, we didn't hit a bottom until 2012, because they decided not to foreclose. So I had staff, my at that time, if you take the dollar now, my monthly outflow was 120 grand a month. And it was a lot of overhead. And that was a big lesson at the time, that I would never do that again. I wouldn't get so cute and so smart, and I would just play it kind of a little more close to the cuff, so to speak.
You would sell off more, you think, rather than transfer it?
Not anymore, because I'm 57 now, 56. I forget how old I am, but 56 or 57.
Probably 50, 6, something like that.
56, 56. No. So now I just have a portfolio of properties that are pretty much, most of them are paid off, and now so I have cash flow, and I don't care if it goes up or down.
Yeah,
I don't. I care, I guess. I do care if it goes down. I don't want that to happen to other people, but it wouldn't affect the rental income that much.
Mm-hmm. So nowadays, now where you're saying you have most of your properties are paid off, but you're still doing like, flips and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have 5 in escrow right now.
Okay.
One's either selling or buying. I think 4 right now to buy.
What's real estate like now? What's it been?
It's been, I I'm shocked. I thought that whenever things started to drop in 2022, I said it's gonna drop, and I put it on my Facebook page. I go, say goodbye to this, kiss this seller's market goodbye, and that would become a buyer's market, and it dropped 15 to 20% in 6 months, and I thought it would continue. That's what I expected to happen. I thought that there'd be a lot more panic, but because of if we wanted to put a picture to it, the golden handcuffs, people don't want to sell their home, and it makes no sense. Sell your home with a 3% interest rate to move to a 7% interest rate.
Yeah.
And it's not just the rate. Actually, even if you sell $1 million home, and we'll say you bought it for $500,000, so you think you're going to get $500,000 back. If you put $500,000 down on your next house and you have a $500,000 loan,
right,
you're going to spend way more, and you've only moved laterally. So so now, I didn't expect that interest rate difference would create such a lack of supply. And so now in the state of California, we have the fewest number of sales in the history of collecting data that goes back to 1960s, the late 60s. It's and early 70s. We've never had so few properties sell. So that's what that lack of supply that is combined with lack of demand is just keeping properties level where they're at. So now it makes it it's an interesting time that you could say it's both healthy and unhealthy at the same time.
I was just going to say, do people really, just because California real estate's so expensive, so people really, even though their house may be like a fixer-upper, it seems like they don't really like letting things go for a lower price, even though it needs a lot of work, right?
They don't do. They don't have to,
right?
Nope, they don't have to let it go in there. The only way that prices would go down again, and it could still happen because we can have black swan events. Nothing good in real estate is going to happen. We're not going to have people talk about, real estate up it's up 3%. It kind of at times it slows down a little bit depending on the time of the year. Real estate's going to pretty much stay where it is, I think. Pricing is going to stay right about where it is. If there's no black swan events, nothing strange, China and Russia, and Korea get together to take over, the Ukraine, or, an invasion of Israel or something that who knows, someone tries to, or actually assassinates Trump, God forbid, but if that black swan type of event, if it doesn't happen, then what we will get, what I'm expecting is, we'll get wage inflation while prices stay the same for houses where they're right now. We'll have wage inflation that will cause property to become more affordable because people make more money. So while the value stays the same, people are going to, over the next 7 years, we'll have about 40% inflation, and the Treasury released about 40%, added about 40% of new money, M1, M2, into the marketplace or into the United States. That is going to dilute the dollar about 40%, and therefore we could expect whatever cost you $100 for a basket of goods is going to cost you $140. Well, it takes a while for wages to catch up to what that inflation, what that did, that money did, and I expect it'll take anywhere for wages. I don't know about how long. I'm thinking between 3 and 7 years, probably 4 and 7 years for wages to catch up to the inflation that took place because Biden said drop, 40%.
Start printing money like style, man.
Yep.
Hey, what do you think are the beliefs or like traits that make you successful at what you do? What are some of the things?
I would say, for me, it's that I tithe. I would say that the Lord, I would say, we always have troubles and finances and everything, but Malachi 3:10 says,
Yes.
In Malachi, it talks about, it's a conversation between Israel, and God is actually saying, you're saying this, and I'm telling you this. And then you say this, and then I say this. So God's having this conversation in Malachi chapter 3. And so he says, you're robbing me. And then God says, and you'll ask, how are we robbing you, God? And God says, I'll tell you how you're robbing me in your tithes and offerings. And because of this, you're under a curse. So then he says, bring the whole tithe. And Malachi 3:10 says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there would be food in my house. Test me on this.
So you can actually ask God about that,
right,
if he doesn't.
Yeah.
Is that what it means? Or
yeah, that's what it means. It means I've always, at the time before I read this and really studied it, it said, and I'm not saying it's a deal, and God, no matter what, is always going to, give to you because you tell. That won't necessarily be it, but I read it over and over and over again. I read, there's books out there on that.
Yeah, I've read it.
And I said, well, God, I'm reading this, and this is what it says. So please forgive me and be merciful to me if I'm misinterpreting this. It's in English, though, and I don't read Hebrew. And it says, you're telling me it's not like a suggestion. When you get around to it, you might want to ask me about this. No, it's a command. It says, test me on this. See if I won't open the windows of heaven and pour out such a blessing that there won't be enough room to contain it. And I said, and this is during a really tough time. Whenever I was having a difficult time in 2011 because there were no foreclosures. It was like who moved my cheese with where properties were going to come from. And I lived off savings for like 6 years for the most part. I still was buying some houses and everything, but I wasn't doing anything fabulous by any stretch. And so I said, this is what it says. And so from now on, I'm going to be doing this. If you want me to, this is a very dangerous prayer. But I said, if you want me to continue to keep doing this, and I was buying properties on the courthouse steps at the time, foreclosures.
Oh, yeah.
Then be clear. And everything, the doo-doo hit the fan that day. It was like one of the worst weekends of my entire life. And I didn't do that, anymore. That is by on the courthouse steps. And I went a completely different direction. But it was on that day that I said, I'm going to tithe every single time and submit my finances completely to you. I don't think that's ever, I rarely, if ever, hear it preached from the pulpit, Malachi 3:10. I mean, they don't even say it. And,
that's right.
And most pastors don't even believe it. And they also, they feel guilty even describing it. But that, for me, it was, there's a pastor out here by the name of Chuck Booher, and he handed out that book, and this book called The ABCs of Financial Freedom. And it goes over Malachi 3:10, and I read it, and I go, that's what it says. So either Jesus is who he said he was this person, and God is who he said he was. And he says in this chapter, in Malachi chapter 3, it says, I don't change. God doesn't change. So then I go, God doesn't change, so therefore, and he's saying, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, and he doesn't change. And I go, to me, that's enough to say, from a logical perspective, the pastors that don't bring this up and maybe instruct individuals on it, that they're lacking. That's pretty consistent, but that is that, pastors might lack on certain topics. But it was persuasive to me, and I said, no matter what then. And so when you asked your question, why is it that I think I'm successful? I think that I know that it's all granted by God, and that I'm being faithful, so he's being faithful with that.
That's awesome. So what's your like, how do you work out? How much do you give?
I ask, I wouldn't give,
not like a specific, but like, is there like a percentage or like,
yeah.
How does
the tithe is the Hebrew word for tenth.
So tenth. Okay.
It's 10%. And, I'll generally go ahead and, as soon as a check came in today, and I already know the exact amount that it's easy. And I tithe on the gross. If I tithed on my net, like what I pay, I'm blessed. I got rental property. So I do have things that, depreciation, and so I tithe based on what the gross is, not what my taxes would say, and I tell the truth with regard to my taxes. So, but I tithe on the gross of what the gross profit. So you might say that's a net, but that's not the net after deductions and everything else that you get as a business owner.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So your culture at do you have employees now? Or is it just you? Do you have employees now working for you?
Yeah. I have an administrative assistant. I have a contracting crews that I just keep busy all the time. They wouldn't be necessarily directly under my payroll, but they all, I'm directing where they're going to go and everything, but they're not my employees. They have their own businesses. So I have contractors. I have inside, I have a person who is technically, he's 1099 because he's on commission only. I don't tell him when to come into the office. And he's working from home all week. So I'm kind of more mentoring him, and he has his own businesses and his own company, but we work together. And so I don't know if they wouldn't be called employees, but they
work with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because my question was going to be like, what's the culture like? Is it faith-based? Do you bring Christian culture? Do you talk about those things?
I absolutely do. But I don't. There was a time whenever everything was like, I want to hire Christians and Christians only.
Yeah.
And then, my experience for that was not very good. And I felt sometimes taken advantage of, and so I just moved away from that. And now it's like, I don't care. Are you good at your job? So what?
Yep.
I'm gonna hire the best people I got, and or that I have in front of me, and whether you're a Christian or not. So
and that's glorifying God as it is there.
Well, there were times. There was a time when there's people in my office, and they knew I was low on money. I had all kinds of assets. This is like 2016, but sometimes as an investor, you might get low on cash. And I was down to like $20,000, right? Which is like a couple of weeks. And they're like, hey, who knew my books? You're down to this. I go, I've been faithful. There's Malachi 3:10. I don't have to worry about it. But I still said, hey, God, when they were gone, I'm like, hey, God, remember that 3 thing? And that was the lowest I probably have ever come to just I'd have to fire sale a few assets in order to pay some bills or what have you. I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
But I go, hey, Lord. But I told him, watch what happens. It's going to be a complete surprise. And it's going to be almost miraculous, wonderful. And sure enough, the next day I bought 10 houses from one family all at once. It was the biggest.
Really?
Yeah, 10 houses all at once. And I went and saw this lady, and it was actually, they're all in Walnut. You know that right off the freeway when you get off the freeway where the In-N-Out is right there, and way it used to be, there's condo right there. I bought this family had 10 houses, 5 condos right there, and I bought them all for like $120,000. And I sold them. This is back in 2016. Gosh, I probably should have kept them, but I sold them all for like $350,000. And so just off those, I made like a lot of money. And then I had
That's
5
awesome.
that I bought. It was the biggest deal I had ever put from one seller ever. It's like I still have some of the houses that I bought from that transaction.
Wow.
It was all because I was faithful I was faithful, and I knew it was coming. I'm like, hey, Lord, remember that Malachi 3 thing? And then they all got to see it. So the individual.
That's what I was just going to say. God was probably waiting to show off,
Yeah, he did. And they're like, well, holy mackerel, that's impossible. I go, told you. He is who he said he was.
Man. That's crazy.
Cool, huh?
That is awesome.
Pretty cool.
Just to come through like that when you say it, Yeah. So what would you say? I mean, if there's anyone out there just starting out or maybe looking to change directions, like in a career.
And go towards real estate or
or maybe kind of anything. What are some of the things that
I would
they
say
should keep in mind?
I would say that ultimately, we all think that we know what's best for us. But when I submit and I let God take control, and sometimes that can be out of necessity, because literally, like I did, you've driven your life into the ditch. I mean, you might be successful as can be, but that doesn't produce joy.
Yeah.
And so I would say submitting your life and your purpose of life. Like, I'll give you that would be what I tell people to do. If they really want to be successful with joy, well, then you have to submit what you want to do professionally to what God has designed you to be, and then you can be the exact size of the Phillips head screwdriver. Even Phillips heads, there's big fat ones and there's little teeny. You have to use, even that one has to be the exact right size for what's necessary for that screw, or you're just going to strip it. You're going to see spinning your wheels. And my experience is, and what's interesting is, I've told that story to my whole family. And so my son, who's 23 now, but at 20 years old, he came to work for me and he learned all the real estate stuff like that, 4 days. I've never had anyone learn stuff in 4 days. He's the smartest one. He's very smart. And, but he couldn't, he was bored and depressed in here doing this, and he needed to be outside. So we talked about it, and I said, remember my prayer. Why don't you ask God for X, Y, Z?
Oh, yeah.
And then he prayed that. And within 24 hours, he had completely, within 24 hours, he's like, that sounds good. Then we went and interviewed a few people in the profession. He's a lineman now, an electrical. Yeah. And he surrendered everything, and God directed it and completely directed his path. And now, I can't tell you, he's making.
Linemen are,
his first year in it, he's making a couple $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
He's doing what he could have made that here, but he would have been depressed. And he's telling me, I can't work in this office. It's depressing. And you and I'm like, give me air conditioning or give me death. And this kid, happy as heck, being in Florida, climbing poles in Florida, August.
Wow.
And then he finally came to California. So maybe it's a little hot there. But he found what God had designed him to be, and it wasn't working with daddy, buying houses. He could have had a cush job. And whenever he told the guys, there were 400 guys roughly that interviewed to be in the apprenticeship. Yeah. And then they ranked them. And he told them that story. He said, I could have worked with a cush job with my dad, but I want this. And so here's this kid who has I can't fix anything. I hire people to fix stuff.
Same here.
Yeah.
Nothing. I can't do nothing.
My wife changes our air conditioning filters. Okay.
Yeah.
So he, I taught him nothing. I had nothing to give him. And he's out there, doing all of this stuff with his hands. It's really what God designed him to be. And that was, so I would say that would be, that was the advice I gave my own son, all my sons. And that would be the same advice I'd give anyone else.
Awesome, man. Well, that was awesome. Hey, I think I'll end it there, man. That's a great way to end it. Yeah. And Nick, it's been awesome, man. It's been awesome.
I've enjoyed it. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you came out. You were able to do it. Privileged. So, that is it.
Sure, bro.
So, hey, hang on. I'm gonna stop recording. And we'll.
Sure.
Your journey to achievement doesn't stop here. Jump on a 10-minute strategy call with Eric Bonilla by DMing at Eric Bonilla Fitness. We'll see you next time on the Unconventional Podcast.